All right, Isaiah chapter 30. Isaiah 30 is where we had actually gotten up close to this last time. So we're going to start in chapter 30, and when we actually 30 and 31 are really referring to basically the same. There's the same instance here, and what's going on is we have Israel, who is going to enter into an alliance, and they're going to enter an alliance with a. It's very interesting that they would enter into an alliance with a nation that at one time enslaved them, but that's exactly what they're going to do. You know, why would you go back to that well? But that's exactly what they're going to do, and all of this is in regards to the the nation of Assyria, who is going to come and is going to put pressure on the nation of Israel, and they are going to rebel against that yoke, and they're going to go and try to, like I said, enter into an alliance. They're going to have an ally. So let's look at this. Excuse me. Chapter 30 and verse 1. Woe to the rebellious children, says the Lord. Who are the rebellious children? Of course, the nation of Israel, right? That's the one. That's who this is written to. We got to remember that God has a relationship with the entire world, but He has a special relationship, especially at this time. He has a special relationship with Israel. They were His children. It was a special relationship, in that He gave them the law that He didn't give anyone else. It was a special covenant. So, with that in mind, when we think about all of these other nations, everyone else in the world, even at this time, everyone else in the world still had to answer to God. And we need to remember that when people will tell us that, only Christians will be judged in a particular way because only Christians are under the law of Christ, and those who are under the law are judged specifically. Well, that's not entirely true, is it? God visits judgment on everyone. You look at the people. He not only judged the nation of Israel before He sent them into captivity, He also judged all the other nations around them. We talked about how all of the other countries that surrounded Israel were also under condemnation. God's instruction for them was different than it was for the nation of Israel, but He still judged them. All we have to do is look at Jonah and Nineveh, right? The sin of Nineveh came up before God. So that would tell us that God is concerned about the conduct of everyone, not just Christians. And all of us will be judged. Every single person is going to be judged. But in chapter 30, verse 1, woe to the rebellious children. Of course, here he is speaking of the nation of Israel, who take counsel, but not of me. So where's one of the issues? They're not. When we have problems, it reminds me of kids. It reminds me of kids who, when they have issues or when they have questions, they'll go to their friends and ask their friends' opinion, but they won't talk to their own parents, who really love them and really have their best interest at heart. But they're going to go to their buddies. They're going to ask them what they think. What's the problem? You've got the blind leading the blind, right? You've got the ignorant leading the ignorant. All right. So these people have gone and they've asked counsel of everyone, but what? Not of the one that gave them what they have. And still, even to this point, still looks after them and still provides for their welfare. And who devised plans, but what? Not of my spirit. What does it mean? They're not walking after God's precepts. Okay? They're not living up to what God has entrusted them with. They're not living up to even the spirit of law, much less the letter of the law. None of it. So they take counsel, but not of me. They devise plans, but not of my spirit. So in other words, they're not asking God His opinion before they embark on something. I always found it a refreshing thing when you hear about people who, a church or a congregation, for example, who wants to enact a program of some kind. But the first thing they do before anything else, before they even start making plans for it, they pray to God. They ask God's guidance. Lord, if it's something that you want us to do, encourage us in it. Give us, the idea of, we don't ask for signs anymore. Well, sometimes we do. God in His providence puts things in our path and it tells us, hey, this is what I want you to do. He doesn't just take hands off of the world and say, well, figure it out for yourself. He puts things in our path. Lord, if you want me to evangelize, give me opportunity to evangelize. And guess what he's going to do? Same thing with us. If we decide we want to do something, we pray about it. Other congregations, they pray about it. I'm looking for a new job. I'm going to pray about it. I'm thinking about maybe buying a house. I'm going to pray about it. All of these things. But here we've got the nation of Israel, and they're not consulting God about anything, no matter what it is. That's a problem. They have prophets, obviously. Why wouldn't they go to the prophets and say, inquire of God for it? Find out what his will is for this. Well, the problem is prophets coming and saying, this is what God wants you to do, and they're saying, not us. That's not what we want to do. We have something better in mind. We have a better idea. Well, that's not the case, is it? They can't have a better idea about what they want than what God wants them to have. All right? So it says, they take counsel, but not of me. They devise plans, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. So that gives us an idea as well, right? There are things that we do that are sin, but part of our sin is what? Not putting God at the forefront of our lives. That's sin. You know, we think about that's something that's a sort of an optional thing, but that's not the case. It is sin when we do not allow God to reign over us. Because we've claimed his Son, by all rights, God should reign over us. He should guide all of our steps. He should guide all of our speech. He should guide everything and all that we do. But when we don't put God at the head, we're in sin. We're in error. And we need to come out of that error. We can't claim Christ and say, well, I want Christ but not God. That doesn't work. So that they may add sin to sin, who walked down to Egypt. And here's where it comes in. Who walked to go down to Egypt and have not asked my advice. So where are they heading? What's going to happen here? Yeah. Israel's looking for assistance against the Assyrians. And where are they going? Are they going to God? Are they saying, Lord, go before us into battle? To redirect these people so that they don't conquer us, that they don't trouble us anymore? No. What do? Here they go. They're sending ambassadors down to Egypt. What are they going to do? What is Egypt going to do? When somebody comes and asks you for help, especially among the nations back then, when somebody comes and asks for help, are they going to do it? Well, we're going to do you a favor this one time. Is this going to come with no strings attached? Mm-hmm. So what is Egypt going to want from them? Whatever they ask for, right? You want our help? This is what we want. We want this, we want this, we want this, and we want this. There's going to be a laundry list of things and goods and items and money. Egypt is going to want some say-so in the governing of Israel. There's a problem, isn't it? That'd be like one of the denominations coming in and saying, hey, listen, we hear that you're having some problems, but we'd be more than happy to put a little money into the treasury. But what we would like is one or two of our people to come and kind of help run things the way that probably will. Maybe you didn't know how to do this right, and we're going to help you out. Well, what would be the problem with that? You're polluting God's people, right? You're polluting them. I don't mean that I don't mean that to be offensive, but that's the truth. That's what's happening. Yeah, exactly. So they walk down to Egypt. They have not asked God's advice to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh. So they're putting their trust in a foreign land, in a foreign power, a pagan idolatrous nation, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore, the strength of Pharaoh. Now here, this is another thing. This is what's so interesting. It's more irony than it is anything else. Remember, who did Israel escape out of slavery to? All right. Who delivered them from slavery in Egypt? Okay. So what they would rather do is go back to Egypt than appeal to the God that delivered them from Egypt in the first place. Who's more powerful, Egypt or God? God, of course. So what they're going to do is they're going to go back to Egypt, the very nation that enslaved them those many years ago, They're going to appeal to a power that was defeated by the very God that they've turned their back on in order to go to Egypt and ask for assistance. Now understand, they're not doing this because they believe that, well, we've trespassed against God so badly that God will never help us. Their thoughts are not on God at all. They're not thinking about God at all. It's like it's willful ignorance. Every year they go a little bit further away, and more calamity happens to them. So they just keep moving further and further away. Well, God hasn't done anything, so we'll keep moving further and further toward these idols that we're worshiping alongside of Jehovah God in the temple even. So we'll keep moving back towards that. You see how apostasy happens by degrees. Ever heard about football's a game of inches, right? That's really what it comes down to. Football's a game of inches. It's they pull out that little string, and if it's right there at that peg, it's a first down. But if it falls just a little bit short, it's not. It's a game of inches. This is what the nation of Israel has been playing with God for millennia. It's inches, right? Just a little bit, by a little bit, by a little bit, by a little bit. And they keep pulling away from Him, keep going into apostasy, and then throw up their hands and say, we don't know what to do. We're baffled. We don't know how do we, and they mourn and they weep and they wail and they throw their hands up and they cry aloud when the very God that gave them what they have stands ready at any moment. When you come back to me, I'll be happy to step back in. But until then, I'm going to allow these things to happen to you. I'm going to allow it little bit by little bit. And finally, we know that His patience is exhausted and He allows them to be completely taken away. It should give us pause for concern even in the church, right? We got to be careful that we don't fall away from God inch by inch by inch by inch. You very rarely go to a place where a congregation was perfectly sound, middle of the road, spoke the right thing, said the right thing, did the right thing, was in complete agreement, and then the next Sunday you come in and everything has changed. That just doesn't happen. It's a little by little it's incremental. It happens over time. But it does happen. Yes, sir. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's comfortable. And if you remember, you're right, because if you remember, what did the nation of Israel say while they were wandering in the desert? Let's go back to Egypt. They knew that. That was comfortable to them. It wasn't pleasant, but I guess if you undergo anything long enough, it becomes second nature. We would rather go back because at least in the land of Egypt, we had bread and we had food and we were taken care of and all these things. They would rather go back into captivity than put a faith and a trust in a God who said, listen, I delivered you from them. I'm going to take you where I said I was going to take you. But you have to do it on my time, and you have to do it in the way that I tell you to do it, the way that I instruct. Well, it's the same way with us, right? Why would we want to go back into Egypt? But that's what we do as Christians. We want to go back into captivity. And God said, listen, it's not always going to be pleasant. It's going to take some time, but I'm taking you where I want you to go, and you have to do it under my timeline, and you have to do it under my instruction. But if you do so, I'm faithful. I'm going to deliver you. And He's saying that to them even now. If you would just inquire of me, if you would just inquire after my Spirit, if you'd ask my counsel, I could save you all of this unpleasantness. But you won't. And Isaiah's he's prophesying. This is over years. It's prophesying. He's been telling them these things. He didn't just show up one day and say, hey, this is what's happening. He's been telling them this from the very beginning. He says, they have not asked my advice, but they strengthened themselves in Pharaoh, a man, a human, and really a fraud. Most pharaohs came to power because of their family. This man, they don't necessarily have any kind of power or strength in and of themselves. It's given to them because of their birth. He said, but I'm the Lord of the universe. With a figurative snap of my fingers, I can destroy your enemies wholeheartedly. I mean, wholesale. There'd be nothing left of them. But you'd rather go after Pharaoh and his chariots and his men and all of these things. Therefore, the strength of Pharaoh shall be your shame. Here he goes. He's telling them exactly what's going to happen if they go down to Pharaoh and ask for his help. The strength of Pharaoh shall be your shame, and trust in the shadow of Egypt shall be what? your humiliation. So this is not going to just end badly. It's going to end very badly for them. And we do find out that their trust in Egypt is absolutely misplaced. Egypt comes and they try to assist, but Egypt and Israel are swept aside like there's nothing there. The strength of Assyria is too great, and they're not able to stand before it. In spite of all of their power, in spite of all of Pharaoh's chariots, in spite of all of those things, they cannot stand because what? This is God's judgment. This is not just simply a group of people trying to do something, trying to take over a kingdom. They're doing this with God's agreement under His direction, with His okay, His say so. But they shall be your humiliation. Verse 4. For his princes were at Zoan, and his ambassadors came to Hanes. They were all ashamed of a people who could not benefit them, or be a help or benefit, but also a shame and also a reproach. Continuing on. And look at verse 7. For the Egyptians shall help in vain and to no purpose. There's nothing that can be done. Because they're standing against God. They're standing against the judgment of God. And nothing can stand against the judgment of God. But look what he says. Therefore I have called her Rahab him Shebeth. The idea of Rahab. What was Rahab able to do for the spies? She was able to hide them, and that's about the extent of it. That's all she could do. She says, "I'll keep you, and then I'll let you down over the wall." But that's really all Rahab could do about it, right? And that's really all that, at the end of the day, all she was able to do was hide the spies. A small thing, it would save their lives, but at the end of the day, there wasn't that much. That's all she could do. Of course, remember, God's will was done, right, at Jericho, right? What God wanted done was done. Verse 8, now go, write it before them on a tablet and note it on a scroll, that it may be for time to come, forever and ever, that this is a what? Rebellious people. This is a rebellious people. It's kind of been their reputation from the very beginning. They've been rebellious. And I'm not sure what caused that. Have you ever seen kids that grow up, and they've been raised for everything you understand in the right way, but they're just rebellious. They've got that rebellious spirit that no matter what you do, you just can't quite stamp that rebellious attitude out. That's been Israel from the very beginning. They have been a rebellious people. He says, write it on a tablet, note it down on the scroll. Here it is. I'm saying, it's like that thing where you say, okay, write down the date. I called it. This is what it is. This is what he's saying here. What else does he call them besides a rebellious people? Lying children. Lying children. Children who will not hear what? The law of the Lord. Not that they don't have it. Understand that. Much like us today. We have the scriptures, right? There are those who will not hear it. They won't hear it. And as children do, you know what they do? They put their fingers in their ears and they hum real loud so that they here it is before them, but they will not listen. More that they will not listen, more than they will not hear. They hear, but they're not listening. The word of the Lord is still proclaimed, but they're not listening. Isaiah is proclaiming the word of the Lord, but they hear it. They have no choice but to hear it, but they're not listening. They're not paying attention. It's interesting that Jonah had more response to his preaching than Isaiah did to his. This godless group of people in Nineveh actually listened more than the children of Israel did to Isaiah. The people who actually had the law. They were less interested in getting their act together than the people of Nineveh did. They heard it and they repented in sackcloth and ashes. The children of Israel heard it and put to death the prophet. Kill the messenger. There it is. Verse 10. Who say to the seers, do not see, and to the prophets, do not what? Do not prophesy to us right things. Speak to us what? Smooth things. Prophesy what? Deceit. Get out of the way. Turn aside from the path. Cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. So basically, what is the nation saying to these prophets? What are they saying to Isaiah, for example? Basically, I wonder why. You think about this for just a couple of minutes. There's several reasons why. There's not just one major reason why. What are some reasons that they would not want to hear the word of the Lord being proclaimed? Let's think about it today. Why do people not want to hear the word of the Lord proclaimed? Yeah, it confronts them in their error. What? Okay, it gets in the way of what they want to do. What else? Yeah, we got the convicts us in our error. What about guilt? When we hear the word of the Lord, what does it do? It pricks our conscience, doesn't it? Whether we want to admit it or not, it pricks our conscience. So what do? We shout louder. All we have to do is shout louder than the prophet, and our conscience has been assuaged. We're okay now. I've made my I've had my say so, and I was able to outshout the word of the Lord, and therefore I feel a little bit better about it. I don't have to hear it. I don't have to listen to it. But at the end of the day, what's going to prevail? My conscience or the will of the Lord? Will of the Lord all day long. But here's what's happened. They've told him, don't tell us these things. Don't prophesy to us the word of the Lord. I like what he says, prophesy to us smooth things. I like that. Smooth things, prophesy deceit. When Satan comes to us and he tries to tempt us, how does he try to tempt us? Think about the snake in the garden, the serpent in the garden, right? Oh, yeah, you can imagine. It reminds me, I don't know that anybody's seen the animated version and the live version of the Jungle Book. Remember the snake that came out and was talking to the little boy, and he would come out. The snake would come out, and it was very smooth, very almost hypnotic, just kind of easy speaking. And all of a sudden, the little boys, you see the little circles in the eyes. He becomes hypnotized. But that's kind of what deceit does to us. It hypnotizes us. It pulls us in because it's very smooth, very flattering, deceitful. When Satan wants us, he doesn't come and try to rock our boat. He tries to make it, tries to get it as smooth as it possibly can be for us. It's easier to go smoothly into temptation, and that's unfortunately what a lot of people do. Somebody speaks flattering words, smooth speech, and there we go. We're hypnotized. All of a sudden, we find ourselves in a place that we didn't think we were going to be. I imagine when Israel was first established, and even under the judges, and then, of course, under the king, I dare say that at no time did they think that they would end up where they are right now. They had everything. It was sunshine and roses. The Lord was the land was bountiful. Their enemies were kept at bay, and in many cases, they were actually gaining territory. Everything was just right. But as they sinned over time, they find themselves where they are. And here's the problem. It's like the frog in the pot. If you put a frog in a hot, boiling water, it's going to hop out. But if you put that frog in the pot and you turn up that heat a little by little by little, what does he do? He gets accustomed to it, and pretty soon you got a boiled frog because the frog's has become so accustomed to it, he doesn't want to hop out of the pot anymore. Well, here's where the Israelites are. That heat's been turned up by degree by degree by degree over the centuries, and then here they are. Finally, they're a boiling frog in a pot. And there's no escape for them at this point. They've gone so far that they can't come back from it. Their hearts have been hardened. They've become calloused, and they won't even go before God. As a matter of fact, they say, we don't even want God preached to us. Don't give us the word of the Lord. Give us the seed. They're not saying those words exactly, but that's what they're asking for. And there's the sad thing about it is as there has always been, there were people in the land who truly did want God, who truly did worship God, who truly did, in spite of all of the sin around them, continued to worship God in the way that He was intended to be worshipped. Much like what? Today. We're the remnant. The church is the remnant. While all the world around us is marching headlong over a cliff, there is still a remnant that says we will not yield. We don't want you to preach deceit. We don't want somebody to stand up in the pulpit and give homilies and give smooth words and just give feel-good sermons. Tell us the truth. What is the truth? If it hurts us, it hurts us. Maybe we need to be hurt. In a good congregation, a faithful congregation, that's what they're going to... Hey, listen, we want everything. Preach the entire word, right? In season and out of season. That's not where we are here, though. In verse 12, he says, therefore, thus says the Holy One of Israel. Who's the Holy One of Israel? God. He's always the Holy One of Israel. Because you despise this word, whose word? My word, His word, right? And trust in oppression and perversity. Who's he speaking of here? Egypt. Oppression and perversity. Remember, they were perverse people. They worshiped frogs. They worshiped cats. They worshiped the Nile River. They worshiped the sun. They believed that the Pharaoh was a sun god. So these were perverse and oppressive people. And because you rely on them, therefore, this iniquity, the iniquity of going to them for assistance, shall be to you like a breach ready to fall. What's a breach? Ready to fall. Think about it. It's a military term. When you've got an encampment, and or not an encampment, but basically a wall around a city or around an encampment. That's what I was thinking of. When you got an encampment around in the breach, what happens when you breach something? You break it, don't you? All right. When you breach that wall, what happens? It's a short fall. Once that encampment has been breached, once that wall has been breached, it's a very short period of time before the entire thing falls. A bulge and a high wall whose breaking comes suddenly in an instant, and he shall break it like the breaking of the potter's wheel. So who will be responsible for their defeat? The Assyrians will be responsible for their defeat, but who's going to let it happen? Who's going to hasten it? God's going to hasten it. Which is broken in pieces, he shall not spare. So there shall not be found among its fragments a shard to take fire from the hearth. It's going to be so great and so catastrophic, there's not going to be anything left. For thus says the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest, you shall be saved. Now here's giving them an option, right? He's telling them what's going to happen if they continue on this path of falling. But there's still an option, right? There's still a pathway for them. He's always giving them a pathway back. So he says, in returning and rest, you shall be saved. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. So what is he saying here? When it says returning and rest, you shall be saved, what is he saying? If you come back to me, if you return to me, and you rest in me, what's going to happen to you? You'll be saved. I'll protect you. I'll redirect this calamity. It will not happen to you. This is my promise to you. But what? You would not. Remember, God knows what they're going to do even before they do it. He says, if you do this, I'll save you. But I know you're not going to. Because you've already put your hope and your trust in this nation of perverseness and oppression. I know what's going to happen. I know before you even started this, I knew what you were going to try to do. And I'm telling you now, this is not going to work. I tried to get you to come back. I gave you every option. I gave you every pathway back, but you would not take it. So I will cause calamity to fall, and it will be suddenly, and it will be completely and totally catastrophic. You will not believe the catastrophe that's going to befall you. Verse 16, and you said, no, for we will what? Flee on horses. Therefore you shall flee, and we will ride on swift horses. Therefore those who pursue you shall be swift. So no matter what your plans are, no matter what you think you might be trying to do, no matter what course of action you take, it will not avail. You can flee. The people who are going to pursue you are going to be faster than you. You're going to put your hope in the... Remember, God told them, He said, I don't even want you to have chariots. I don't want you to put your trust in the instruments of warfare. He told them that from the very beginning of their establishment as a nation. He said, I don't want you to store up all of these... The nation of Israel, when it's in its infancy, the soldiers of the nation were simply the people who lived there. It was a militia. It was a militia system. Everyone would have instruments of warfare, and when God called them, they were able to rise up, kind of like we were in the infancy of this country. We didn't have a standing army. We had a bunch of farmers. So everybody had a rifle, right? You kept it by your side. Hey, we got problems. Everybody grabs a rifle, and they head out for battle. Well, same thing happens with the nation of Israel. That was the way it was, and God said, I don't want you to put your trust in a standing army. I don't want you to have chariots and horses and all of these things. You trust in me, and I'll give you what you need. I'm the greatest tactician of all time. I'm the greatest battleground general of all time. I'm the utmost weapon. I will go before you into battle. No. We want all of the things of the nation that surrounded us. We want to be like them. So what did they do? They have this army. They have the chariots. They have the horses. And what are those things going to do for them? Not going to help at all. Because the people that are coming are going to be greater, they're going to be faster, they're going to be stronger, they're going to be more numerous, they're going to be better trained, all of these things. There's a reason that they were going to Egypt, because Egypt had a trained battle force. It's not going to help. The help that they give is not going to be enough, because they're fighting against something that they cannot win against. They're fighting against a superior force that also has God behind it. All right. So, therefore, those who pursue you shall be swift. You can't outrun them. 1,000 shall flee at the threat of one. I like that. You got it's basically the ratio is 1 Assyrian to 1,000 Israelites and Egyptians, and it's not going to help. It's not going to help. You have the superior force, and it's not going to help. 1,000 shall flee at the threat of one. At the threat of 5 you shall flee, till you are left as a pole on the top of a mountain and as a banner on a hill. You're going to be utterly alone. There you are. This is it. You're going to be stranded, so to speak. Therefore, the Lord will wait, that he may be gracious to you. So even now, knowing that they're not going to do it, he stands ready to assist. He stands ready. He waits. Waits for that request that never comes. Until when? Until in the middle of the battle, when they realize that all is lost, then what do? They go back to God. God save us. God spare us. God prevent this from happening. Do your thing. We relent. And he says, not this time. You can cry and you can cry and you can cry. This is the end. This is the end for you. You will never again achieve what you are right now. Never going to happen. And therefore he will be exalted, that he may have mercy on you, for God, the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all those who wait for him. Tells us, he's speaking to us today. I stand ready. I'm waiting. But there's going to be a point where it is going to be too late for you. The time to call upon the Lord is when? Now. The time to call upon the Lord, even for these people, was during peacetime. Not when a force has been arrayed against you. You go to God in peace. You go to God when there's nothing going on. You establish that relationship with him then, and then when the bad times do come, what happens? You've got a protector. You've got a fortress. You've got a place that you can run to, a citadel that you can run and hide in. Don't wait until it's in the heat of the battle, when the battle is lost. At that point, it's too late. You shall weep no more. And here he goes into, in verse 18, the last point of verse 18, he switches times from present time to when? In the future, right? Verse 8, Verse 19, for the people shall dwell in Zion at Jerusalem. All right, he's changed places here. He's changed timelines. What timeline is he on now? The Messianic timeline. All of this is going to occur. He's going to destroy you. There's nothing going to be nothing going to be left. But then what? Verse 19. For the people shall dwell in Zion at Jerusalem. What's happening here? You shall weep no more. He will be very gracious to you at the sound of your cry. When he hears it, he will answer you. And though the Lord gives you the bread of adversity and the waters of affliction, yet your teachers will not be moved into a corner anymore. But your eyes shall see your teachers. Your ears shall hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. So what are we talking about is happening now? The coming of the Messiah. All of these things are going to seem as nothing. But there's going to be something that is going to happen, and it's going to be something great. There will be a way. You will walk in the way. You will weep no more. He will be gracious to you. He'll give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, but what? You'll overcome. Remember, Isaiah switches back and forth between his own timeline and the timeline of Christ almost at a whim. But he always follows up. You notice that he follows up his prophecy of adversity and his prophecy of destruction, his prophecy of doom, and then he goes right into what? Prophecy of hope, right? He talks about the good things that are going to happen. Not for the nation of Israel. Their time is done. There's nothing that can be done for them. They're going to lose, and they're going to be swept away into the dustbin of antiquity. There's nothing to be done for them, but there will come something that is far greater. And it's not going to be a political thing. It's not going to be a nation thing. It's going to be a seed thing. Right? Through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, there's going to come a Messiah. And he's going to usher in a time of, we talk about a time of peace and prosperity. It's not necessarily going to be physical peace and prosperity, is it? It's a spiritual peace, a spiritual prosperity. The idea that, for once, we're not going to have to worry about these things. We're not worried about coming and somebody sweeping us out of our place. Do we, as the Lord's church? That's not what we worry about, is it? Why? Because God says He's going to deliver us. He says, I'm going to take care of you. No matter what your problem is, I'm going to take care of you. I'm not going to allow you to see destruction. Gates of hell will not prevail against you. It's a continual promise that He's given to us. Let's see. Give me just a second. I think I'm going to go to... let's go to verse 27 of chapter 30. As God gave the Assyrians power to destroy the northern kingdom and the kingdom of Israel, He gives them that power. He's behind them. But as He was, in the same way, behind the Babylonians who came to destroy Judah, what's going to happen to these foreign powers? They're going to see judgment as well. Just because God allowed them to come to power does not mean that He agrees with what they're doing. He doesn't mean that they're somehow righteous in His sight. It means that they were tools that He used. So as the Assyrians were a tool of destruction for Israel, something's going to happen to the Assyrians as well. In verse 27, it kind of starts that. Behold, the name of the Lord comes from afar, burning with His anger, and His burden is heavy. His lips are full of indignation, and His tongue is like a devouring fire. His breath is like an overflowing stream which reaches up to the neck, to sift the nations with the sieve of futility. Now, the idea of nations here, that word has always been used in the Scriptures to refer to the nations other than, the lands and the countries other than the nation of Israel. Even today, when you talk to even the secular land or nation of Israel, they talk about the idea of the nations, and that's everyone other than them. They're still very insular. It's just them. And in some ways I can understand because they are surrounded by a group of people that don't like them very much. They talk about the idea, the nations, so to speak. So he says that the Lord is going to what? He's going to sift the nations with the sieve of futility. What does that mean? What is he trying to tell us? He's going to sift the nation. Okay. Just because He gave them the power to do a specific thing does not mean what? Yeah, that they have any power other than what God gave them in the first place. The only reason they were able to sweep away Israel was because God allowed them to. If God had put His foot down and not allowed it, then there's nothing they could have done about it. He's basically showing that God is in control of the world. All right, it's kind of an interesting way that He's using that idea. He's going to sift them, but He's going to sift them using what? The sieve of what? Futility. All of their other machinations, everything else that they've put into place is futility. Because why? God's not included in it. The things that they've decided are absolutely futile because God is not in charge of them. The only reason that what they did was successful was because God allowed them to do it. But they've not included God in anything else. And if God had not wanted it, it would not have happened. It says, and there shall be a bridle in the jaws of the people, causing them to err. You shall have a song as in the night when a holy festival is kept, and gladness of heart as when one goes with a flute to come into the mountain of the Lord. To the mighty one of Israel, the Lord will cause his glorious voice to be heard and show the descent of his arm. What's the arm always mean? Power. When the arm of the Lord is revealed, or when it talks about the arm of the Lord, it means that it's the power of God coming down. You know, I think of the idea of, think of the arm coming down, the idea of the power of the Lord is on full display. It says, he will show the descent of his arm with the indignation of his anger and the flame of a devouring fire. Why is he angry? Because they dared set foot against God's people. Now we think, well, that's inconsistent. No, it's extremely consistent. God is angry with them because they did destroy his people, even though he allowed it to happen. So what is he going to do? He's going to deliver them up. You know, the Assyrians were swept aside with the rest of the nations that came up against God's people. All of them did. They all saw destruction. With the flame of a devouring fire, with scattering tempests and hailstones, for through the voice of the Lord, who will be beaten down? Assyria will be beaten down as he strikes with the rod, and in every place where the staff of punishment passes, which the Lord lays on him. All right, we'll stop there.